Hello everybody, Jordan here, the PH is silent, and in this episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show, we talk a lot about Eberron and the Artificer, as well as homebrewing adventures versus modules, which takes longer to prep. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Saturday Morning D&D Show. My name is Jordan with a silent PH in the middle, and I am joined always by my wonderful co-host, Sir Lucian, over at Sir Lucian Gaming. Say hello, sir.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody in chat. Let's get those levels just right. Woo, woo.
Ooh, yeah,
Welcome
levels.
to June 1st. We
2019.
made it. Yeah, we made it.
Today is Tabletop Day, if I'm not mistaken.
I love Tabletop Day.
Let me,
Did I somehow miss that again? I always go down to my game store on Tabletop Day, and I purchase something to support my local game store.
Tabletop Day is June 1st.
Yay!
So
we should have that on the news as if we were...
Yeah, I literally, you said June 1st, and I just remembered because I got I put it in my Google Calendar, and it came up as a ping last night. It was like, oh, hey, it's Tabletop Day tomorrow. And I was like, oh, what? And so, I don't know. I've got a lot of projects that I was going to work on today, but maybe I'll swing by my local friendly neighborhood gaming store.
It is on my list now. I'm going to go buy something in there. They always have something cool. Like a lot of times too, I like to go through the used game section because there'll be a lot of used role-playing games that people brought in to get money to buy other stuff. And I'll find some really good old stuff in there. That's always good.
Yeah. And then I think in a couple weeks, it's free RPG Day.
Yes.
Which I went last year or it was last year or 2 years ago. Anyway, they had a Kids on Bikes pamphlet, and that started my obsession with Kids on Bikes, was at free RPG Day. So Kids on Bikes people, Renegade Games,
we love you.
Free RPG Day, you guys succeeded in one customer with that. So good job.
Yeah, because you bought a bunch more stuff after that.
I bought a lot of stuff with the dice, and I've been playing games, and I did all that other stuff. And I don't know if I even talked about, I talked about Kids with Wands, how I ran that one shot. Yeah, we talked about that last time. I forgot.
Wait, did you tell us how it went, or did you tell us that you were going to do it?
Yeah, because I did it. So I don't know if I told you if we got around to talking about it. Maybe I'll talk about that today because it was really fun. Yeah. And it looks like I'm going to run the same adventure that I ran for my friends and put on the Saturday Morning D&D Show because I don't have time to write another adventure. But Indoor Adventurer on his Twitch channel, he does One Shot Wednesdays. And he wanted me to run it on his One Shot Wednesdays channel. So I have to sacrifice my Ghosts of Saltmarsh game for one Wednesday so that I can turn around and play a one shot on Indoor Adventurers channel. But I think it'll be worth it and it'll be fun. And my home group is like, oh no, for sure. Like, go ahead and do that. So if you missed it, or if you want to see it again with like brand new people, I'm going to run Kids with Wands. It's going to be fun. Cool. It'll be a blast. Yeah. So as we started this, I was like, I don't think we have a lot of news. Do we have a lot of games that we played? So I felt like this is going to be like a shorter show, but we always end up talking for an hour, so I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, it'll work out.
But today is Tabletop Day. It is welcome to June. Summer is here. Kids are out of school, which is always fun in my neighborhood where I'm like all these kids walking around. I'm like, what are you doing? Shouldn't you be somewhere? But it's summer. They should be exactly where they're at. I'm going to turn into the crotchety old man on my porch that's just like, what are you kids doing? Get off my lawn. Yeah, it's crazy. But what's going on in the world of D&D, Mr. Lucian?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that because we had the big event, we always have that lull after a big event has happened because there's been so much news dump. There's been so much going on. So many shows were participated in that, and now they're kind of taking a breather. But they're also getting ready for a lot of the conventions that are about to happen too, because we've kind of really hit the big summer convention season at this point. So I think we didn't get a lot of new stuff that we haven't heard. Just a couple things that I noticed was we talked about Warriors of Waterdeep, which was a mobile game that was coming out, and I did see that they released it.
Yeah.
It's not one that I played. I was almost going to download it, but it felt like as I was reading the description in the mobile phone store app, it sounded like there might be a monthly fee, like a $6 or $7 monthly fee. And I
Ooh,
thought,
really?
well, I'm already spending a lot of money on D&D. I'm going to hold off and see if I want to research a little better. So maybe some of you, maybe you guys have Warriors of Waterdeep. I'm pretty sure you can find it in the Apple Store, any of the Google stores, and those kinds of things for the other devices that are out there. Let us know what you think about it. If you are playing it, let us know what the monetary transactions, because obviously any type of game like that usually has some type of microtransactions, a way to make some money. So I don't know if it's any good. The reason I was interested in it is because I have been playing a lot of Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms, which I do really like, and I do highly recommend to people who like a game that's kind of hands off. I know Jordan played it a little bit, and I think the key is you go into it and something that you leave kind of running, and then you just check it every now and then, versus a game that you're going to like say, okay, I'm going to sit down for 5 hours and play. It's not that kind of game. It's more of like you set them up, you send them on an adventure, and you let them go do their thing, and you come back and you check it, and maybe you play for 10 minutes, maybe you play for 20 minutes, and then you let it go. Almost like would that be like a Candy Crush or like maybe a Pokemon kind of thing?
Well, not Pokemon, but like definitely it feels like a game for people who are software developers, because you put it up over here on this screen and then you start coding, and then like when you're stumped with the coding, you go back to your game and you're like, oh, I leveled up, cool, and then you go back, oh yeah, that's right, and then you go back to coding. Or maybe it's for authors or something, somebody who like works at it.
I was doing a support call, and I'd have it over on my left screen just running. And then like somebody would call in, I'm like, okay, I'm going to help this person. And you could just leave it running. It's kind of hands off. You just let it do its thing. And then you come back and you're like, oh, let me level up some guys. Let me switch this around. And then when you turn the game off, it still runs even in the off mode. So even if it's not up and running, you're still gaining money if they're in an adventure.
Yeah.
So when you come back, all of a sudden you have like $6 billion and you can spend it on upgrading your character. So and it's one of those games that if you like to collect things, like you want all the heroes and you want all the stuff, then it's kind of fun in that way. So it's not a deep game. It's not something you spend a ton of time on, but I thought it was fun. It's free to start with. I've not spent any money at all in Forgotten Realms, Idle Champions of Forgotten Realms. So I thought maybe Warriors of the Waterdeep might be similar, but on a mobile device. But I think it's definitely a little bit different game. So you guys will have to tell us if anybody's out there playing it, what you think of it. Somebody's saying it is free to play, but okay. Maybe it is, and maybe I just read it wrong how the store described it. So maybe I'll try it if it is free. If it's free to play, I'll always try it. But if I got to pay like $6 a month, I'm very careful on what I pay $6 a month for, because there's so much good stuff out there. My Steam library is full of games.
Well, just like mobile games in general, I just do not like mobile games, because they have a mentality of like fishing for money and there was a Rick and Morty Pokemon style game that they released for mobile, and I was just like, oh, or for tablets, I should say. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is awesome. I love Rick and Morty. I love Pokemon. This is going to be great. And then sure enough, within the first 5 minutes, it's like, it's free to play, but then you run out of Pocket Morty. Thanks, Skull Dixon. That's exactly what it was. I forgot the name. But like you run out of the Pokeballs, and it was like, oh, for $5.99 you can get more and stuff like that. And it was the same thing with Pokemon Go. I was really obsessed with Pokemon Go for a while, but then eventually it's just like, if you want to keep playing, you had to buy money. And I'm the type of consumer where if I really like something, like I'm okay spending $15 to $20 a month on that product. So because I played a lot of MMOs back in the day where it was subscription services, and I was fine with that. Everybody was on the same playing field, blah, blah, blah. But these mobile games, you're not on the same playing field, because the guy that does $200 into his game is going to be significantly ahead of you who puts only $5 into the game. And and not that everything's a competition, but at the same time, when you're playing with your friends and like, oh, I can't play anymore because I reached my $5 limit for the month. I don't know. So I don't like the psychology around mobile games right now. And I'm an old man on the table or on my porch telling kids to get off my lawn. But I just want to buy a game. I remember when Cuphead came out, I really liked Cuphead, and I bought that game, and that had no DLC, no like extra things to get, no whatever. It was just like you bought the game, you would unlock stuff playing the game, and it was a lot of fun. So I don't know. That's my rant on mobile gaming. Sorry, I don't like it.
No, I think it's good. I'm mostly in agreement. I think there's a few things that I like. I understand companies want to make money and microtransactions certain things when they put out free things, but I think it definitely can be taken too far. And I hate time limits on things where it says you can play for 20 minutes, but once that 20 minutes is out, you need to buy a token to play again. Exactly. That I don't like. If I want to dump 7 hours into something, let me dump 7 hours in it. Don't gate me on that. So.
Yeah, like MMOs kind of changed that direction too, where they kind of went towards like the free to play, and I just don't like it. Yeah. I was like, just give me a subscription. Well, one thing Neverwinter, I wanted to love you so much, but you were free to play, and I just wanted you to have a subscription.
Well, the reason I thought it might be interesting is because it says Warriors of Waterdeep, which then means it's grounded in Forgotten Realms, which then means if you are a lower person of Forgotten Realms, that may have some cool stuff in it that maybe somehow we don't know about. And so I was almost looking at it just from the canon standpoint, not even maybe caring about what the gameplay is like, but it might give us stories of stuff that maybe we haven't heard before, or maybe like news stories that are part of Forgotten Realms and that kind of stuff. So I thought it might be interesting there. Because who are the Warriors of Waterdeep? Who are they? Random characters? Are they people that are actual characters? It'd be interesting to kind of see. So I'll have to check it out. If it's free to play, I'll check it out.
Lucian's official review next week on the Warriors of Waterdeep. Warlords.
So we're really cool over on the D&D channel. Jeremy Crawford sat down in Dragon Plus once again, and with Bart Carroll, and they talked about Artificer, and they talked about the two new classes that they've released, the two subclasses of the specializations that they released with Artificer, and they gave a more grounded. I almost feel like I wish this video happened and then they let the article go out like the next day or during the show, because the way they describe the two subclasses made way more sense when I hear it coming from Jeremy and what they were trying to do with it and why they went this route, versus when I read it, I wasn't sure why we were building an artificial intelligence creature for the one part of the class, or like what did the two add that we didn't get with the other two subclasses. But once you listen to that kind of the questions that they bring up and why they picked the things they chose and where they were going with it, and that he really was talking with Keith Baker quite a bit, it is clear to me that this is getting released in that Eberron book. I mean, they didn't say that, but the way all of the clues point to, I think we get Artificer in the book. I think it'll be slightly changed from the UA articles that we have now. He even mentioned that there were still some adjustments that they wanted to make, but I think that's when we get it in an official book. So it'll be interesting. Have you read the two? I mean, we talked a little bit about it. I'm playing the artillerist part of it, which is an interesting Artificer. But what if you were going to play an Artificer of the four?
There's 4?
Which one are you thinking you'd play? Yeah, there's 4 subclasses now. Did you see the?
No, alchemist, artillerist, the research one that I can't remember the name of. What's the 4th one?
Yeah, the war. Let me get to it. I should have had my. I didn't.
Right now, while you're looking that up, I really like the alchemist. I think the most. Like I like Archivist. That's the research one. What's the other one?
And then artillerist is the one I'm playing, and then the last one is the battlesmith.
Oh, battlesmith. Okay.
Yeah. Who has the iron defender?
Right. The like golem thing that walks around, because they're all kind of pet based. Like even the alchemist has like a little pet.
Well, you say that, but the way they make it, the way Jeremy was talking about it, is he said we wanted 2 of them to be pet based and 2 of them not to be. Okay. Though you may think of the other 2 as pets, the way they're structured in the rules, they are not creatures, so they cannot be targeted as such.
Okay.
So they become things that give you abilities and let you do things. They have rules, but they aren't necessarily a pet like the artillerist and the battlesmith, which have an actual pet stat creature. that can be affected by things.
The alchemist, you can make a homunculus, and I'm pretty sure it's like it has stats and things like that, and it can take the help action and things like that.
Yes.
Maybe I'm wrong. Yeah. So
the homunculus is considered a creature, a tiny construct neutral.
Okay.
The turret does not have a stat block like that.
There you go. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
The archivist artificial intelligence thing that you create does not have a stat block like that. But then the Iron Defender does have a stat block that's considered medium construct neutral.
Yeah. So back to your original question, I think I would play the Alchemist. That was the one I was most excited about, and that's the one that my player in my Saltmarsh game is playing right now. So we're testing it out. He's only level 1. Well, now he's level 2 after our thing. Spoilers. But yeah, I just like the idea of, I don't know, having like mixing concoctions and things like that, and being able to be in 2 places at once with your pet. And kind of sad for the Beastmaster Ranger. I know you're playing a Beastmaster Ranger in another game, but like, it's like they got pets right with this one. Like your HP is 5 times your level instead of like 4 times your level. So you have extra hit points for your pet. They we have what's the word? Errata that fix a lot of that. Yeah, fix a lot of that. I forget about that, but because they do the same thing where if you don't issue a command, it takes the dodge action automatically. Yeah. But I don't know.
I agree.
I guess your Beastmaster pet can attack, and my homunculus can't. It just does the help action, kind of like a familiar. But
in the Iron Defender, by 3rd level, the tinkering in your free time has borne you a faithful companion, an Iron Defender. They might switch that. He said he might turn it back to a Steel Defender. They were going back and forth with the word either iron or steel. And this metallic creature resembles a hound, a cougar, a bear, or another 4-legged creature of your choice.
Table.
So it is not...
Walking table.
Yeah, there you go. But it's not like... When I thought of it, I thought like when you said immediately, I was thinking like a big iron kind of golem-y dude that would walk around and help you out. And I thought, that'd be kind of cool to have like a power-suited guy, or maybe I can ride around on him or something. But it specifically points it towards a 4-legged creature, which I thought was an interesting choice. Why can't it be a 6-legged creature? Why can't it be a 3-legged creature? Or whatever. But just reading it, and I'm sure they don't mean for it to be that specific, but I think they mean to give you a starting point and then let GMs and dungeon masters and game masters kind of take it from there to say, you can do this in my game, or you can have, if you really wanted your Iron Defender to be a bird, maybe that's something your dungeon master would let happen or something. That's
really interesting that they're so focused on like iron versus steel. Like I wonder why that's like a point of I'm just seeing the meetings.
There's a creature that was called an Iron Defender or a Steel Defender.
Oh, there is there's iron golems.
No, I think there's something that has that name.
Iron Defender. Oh, okay.
And then what Jeremy was saying is we might want to bring that creature back into a book, give it out, bring it, because it sounds like it's either a 3rd edition or a 2nd edition or something like that. And so he was worried that they may want to bring it back in an adventure, so they can't really necessarily use it as a companion for the Battlesmith. But he said he was talking with Keith Baker, and they were going back and forth on what they thought, what they liked.
Cool.
But it's clear he's doing a lot of talking with Keith Baker about how this fits in Eberron. So this is clearly an Eberron class. So here starts to come out. So now that we finally jumped planes, right? This news piece leads into it a little bit. Since everything's been Forgotten Realms up till now, when you said,
except Castle Ravenloft.
Sure. but there was no new classes or races in there, was there? No. Right. Okay. So when you say, hey, I'm going to start a campaign and you can use any of the Wizards Coast printed material, that was kind of a no-brainer because it was all happening in Forgotten Realms anyways. But now we've had Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. We're about to have an Eberron book towards the end of this year at some point. Do we start to see that we're doing a campaign that is Forgotten Realms character-based, or do we let the Eberron characters come in? Is there a problem with letting Eberron characters come into the Forgotten Realms campaign setting? Is there any problems with the way It sounds like they're balancing everything well, but Eberron is a different world than Forgotten Realms. And
well, if you're playing Adventure League, then no. Like I don't. If you're playing in a Forgotten Realms Adventure League, then you cannot be a Warforged or Kalishtar or anything like that. So Changeling.
And probably not Artificer at this point, or not one of the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica stuff, because there was a bunch of cool stuff in that too.
Races, yeah, you can't be a race from Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. Yeah.
So I think that's interesting, because I think we're at the point now where they have to make that decision. And as game masters or dungeon masters in our own campaigns, we are poised with this question of what classes fit in the campaign I'm trying to run and match the theme, and which ones don't. So maybe I shouldn't. And I know we all already maybe do some of that stuff, but I feel like we've pretty much let everything in for now, because it's all been Forgotten Realms. But now we've really started to get some other world stuff. Like if we get a Dark Sun all of a sudden, or we get something that's really different, we get Spelljammer, we get something else that's really kind of out there. Eberron's starting to move that route. That's like, Eberron to me is like halfway between sci-fi and fantasy, right? So it sits there in the middle. But there's nothing that says they couldn't do a sci-fi setting at this point with 5e rules that comes from Wizards of the Coast, not by anybody else. And then do we let those characters come in too? So now where are we at in this point of the 5e lifespan?
Yeah. I don't know. I always think about when I saw Keith Baker at Gen Con, and he was talking about when he originally wrote Eberron, he wanted it to be its own separate thing away from like all D&D stuff. But not D&D stuff, sorry, but from like, it's not part of this weird multiverse. And Wizards of the Coast didn't like that. They want all these different campaign settings to be connected somehow. And so the compromise was that there is this huge, like you have Forgotten Realms and you have Dark Sun and Greyhawk, and they're all kind of next to each other. And then you have a huge void. And then on the other side of that void is Eberron. And Eberron kind of has its own laws, magical laws, and its own, it's grounded in the rules of Dungeons and Dragons, but it has its own magical laws and things like that. And I always thought that was really interesting, because kind of like, and I just finished a big video on Curse of Strahd, but Barovia was like that too. Like Barovia wasn't really supposed to be part of anything, but Wizards of the Coast wants it to fit into their multi-universe Dungeons and Dragons world. So they wrapped it up into the Shadowfell in 4th edition. But originally Barovia was just like, no, it's just this weird mystical realm that's kind of its own separate thing, and it has its own magical mystical laws, and this is how death saves work here, and this is how this works here, and souls work differently here because it's a separate world. And it didn't have to be part of something else, but they like that it is part of something else, or that's what they're pushing for, I guess. So
yeah,
I don't know, which always like, and I forget his name off the top of my head, but Nathan Stewart. His name? Yeah.
Nathan B. Stewart.
Yeah, he was saying, like, he's always teasing, not teasing, but he's teasing us about Spelljammer. But that is the one campaign setting that linked all the other campaign settings. So it's like one of those things where I'm like, you have to introduce this at some point, I feel.
Yeah. And if your audience brings it up all the time, another tangent here, why wouldn't you bring them a book of Spelljammer? At this point, the people would buy a Spelljammer book, only because they bring it up every single time he does a show. And in chat, they're always, okay, when are you announcing Spelljammer? Or every time they say we have a new announcement coming, they're always like, Spelljammer? So it's popular. People would want it. Why wouldn't you give that to the people? Why would you hold it back, I wonder?
Yeah, I don't know. It's there's a strategy to their release, I'm sure. But also it's funny because I have people online that comment on my videos or send me messages, and they're just like, hey, I want to do like a Guildmaster Ravnica. Like, how do I get from Forgotten Realms to Ravnica? Or how do I do this? Or how do I do that? And I look at them and I'm kind of like, you're a DM. You say there's a portal that opens up, or you magically got teleported, or there's a weird magic bridge that when you cross it, you're then in the world of Ravnica. Like, it's a problem that is very simple for dungeon masters to fix.
Mm-hmm.
Yet all of us collectively seem to want some official stuff to know that I have to get in a Spelljammer ship. I have to cross through a crystal sphere into another crystal sphere through the Phlogiston. You know, like, they want rules that allow me to go from one to the other when I'm like, there's a portal. You just make a portal. It's not hard. So it's solving a problem that really isn't a problem, because if you want to jump to other things, then yes, the dungeon master can make that happen.
You are the god of gods. You are the god. You're the dungeon master. You control it all. Yeah, that's good. But I do understand people, they almost want, like you said, like permission, or they just want to know that it's okay. They're about to change something. Because it feels like there's a large group of people out there that are very careful about following what they think the canon is, or what they think is being true to that setting is the way it's been portrayed. And they don't try to change much of it. They try to run it just like it's been either in the books or the way that's shown, and they don't make a lot of changes to it. And I think and that's okay. I mean, that's okay if you do that too, but it's okay to also hear that you can change things if you want. You're supposed to. Even the designers of the game knew or encourage you to do that and are okay with it. They're not going to, Wizards of the Coast doesn't knock on your door and say, wait a minute, you're running Storm King's Thunder, but you threw an Artificer in. That's it. We're revoking your DM badge. Let's go. Give it up.
I knew they were come. So, the D&D police, they're out to
the D&D police, which Wizards, if you ever do form a police brigade, I'll volunteer.
That would be the worst job. Like, knock, knock, knock. By the way, your fun is wrong.
Give me your DM book. Give it over. Let's do it. Confiscate it.
Your fun is wrong.
That would be a good parody video, though.
Yeah, that would actually. I should write that. That would be really fun.
So other than that, I thought, so it is interesting to see the Artificer. There is the survey is out now. If for those of you that have been playing it, want to give your feedback, or even a dungeon master who has a player playing it in their campaign could fill that out with their kind of idea of how it's affecting their game, the things that they see. That's also valid kind of feedback to give to Wizards of the Coast so that they can make some of those changes. And I filled mine out and gave in. I might even try to fill a second one out as I keep thinking of more stuff, just to give them as much information as I can about what I think about the Artificer, which I love. I actually love the class. Again, I don't think I'll ever run an Eberron campaign, though I wouldn't mind playing in one. It's not the setting that I'm like excited for myself to run. But I do like the Artificer, and I do like some of the things that they have in it that I definitely allow into my games. So
yeah, when my group was changing from Hot Springs Island, a lot of them were just like, well, are we going to play an Eberron campaign? And I was like, man, I never really thought about running one, because they give you all the Eberron's really good at giving you all the information to write your own campaign, but they don't have a lot of, as far as I know, they don't have a lot of pre-written campaigns. Maybe I'm wrong. There's probably early 3.5 stuff out there, but I was like, man, I never really thought about that. But you're right, Eberron's cool. Like, we should play an Eberron game. Like, it could be really awesome. So
yeah. Other than that, finishing out the news, I did see a little blurb that came over that Archon being played by Joe Manganiello. Is that right? I always get his name wrong. Manganiello?
I think so. I could be wrong.
Okay.
We're really bad at this. We should learn.
His name
he's going to keep coming up in the news, Lucian. He's going to keep coming up in the news.
Get it right. We'll have to phonetically spell it so that we're not trying to just figure it out on the fly. But apparently his actual Archon, the character, Archon the Cruel, will be in or can be found or is some way involved in the descent to Avernus, which was interesting. Oh, and on the news channel, they talked about how you pronounce Avernus as opposed to Avernus.
Ooh.
And yeah.
I've been doing it wrong.
And Jeremy was saying the way he tries to remember is he tries to remember a furnace, so Avernus, but I know there are, whatever pronunciation in D&D.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is for any of those of you that are fans of the Dice Camera Action show, Greg Tito kind of did make an official announcement. We've seen a few things come out from like Anna and one or two other places that have just been, we don't know anything yet, not real information. Greg Tito did say that they did not have their show right after his D&D show, so they did not have a show this week. The show is on what they said is the word hiatus, and they are currently talking with Chris Perkins about what they want to do or what other types of things they could do with his game and in that time slot, if it's going to stay there, if they're going to create something new, if Chris is going to bring new characters in and stay in the same world, or if Chris is going to do something different. It sounds like they're in discussion at the moment about what possibly could happen. So that's probably as much as we'll go into it. You can just keep an eye out there for news.
New show, invite Jordan. He's got a death cleric named Elgath that wants to play. So
yeah, would love it. To play with Chris Perkins would be crazy.
That would be amazing. That would be so fun.
So that's about it for news. We didn't have a lot and we didn't have a ton, but we were able to use up 30 minutes. So there you go.
Hey, news.
So I think I went first last week. So I'll let Jordan go first this week. Jordan, what happened with your role-playing week last week? What kind of stuff did you play? What kind of stuff did you run? What did you do?
Yeah. So actually, my other people on Sunday that I usually, so Sunday's kind of divided up into two things, but Memorial Day weekend, Monday, we ended up playing more of Betrayal Legacy. So that group, I think we have one session left of Betrayal Legacy, and then we're going to go back to D&D.
The board game. Right?
The board game.
Really cool, super fun board game.
So fun. It's so good. It's so good. But we're finishing that up, and lots of cool stuff's happening in that. And then we're turning around and going back to D&D, where my players will be in the Shadowfell. And so that's really exciting. And I have to now start thinking about that campaign and writing a bunch of stuff. And it's interesting because I was thinking about that, and then I'm also running Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and we had our first session with that. And I was weighing in my head, what takes more time? Because I'm not the fastest reader, but I'm not bad. I can read a book. And so I sat down and I'm reading Ghosts of Saltmarsh, but to truly absorb Ghosts of Saltmarsh and understand what I'm running, I kind of have to meticulously go through it and reread chapters and go over things again and again. But once I've done that, I feel like I've got it. And counter to that, do I go home and do I write a bunch of stuff? And when I'm writing it, I'm really familiar with it because I'm coming up with it, so it kind of sticks in my brain a little better. And I was really scratching my head as to what's easier. Writing because for a long time I've said that running a module is easier than running a homebrew. But now I'm not so sure anymore. So I was going to ask you, what do you think is easier? What do you prefer? But if you were in a time sink, it's it's quicker for me to just make this up on the fly and then run a game, as opposed to I have to really read this so I understand where they're going and what they're fighting, and especially with not necessarily Ghosts of Saltmarsh, but what was the one I was just reading? It's Curse of Strahd. Has so many, if this happens to this NPC, then you do A. But if this NPC is no longer in the village, then you do B. If this NPC is dead, you need to do C or D. And there's so many things to keep track of, where I feel like if I was homebrewing that, you would just kind of, I don't know, he died. I guess next session I'll write up some stuff about how he died, and I don't have to think about A, B, or C. I just go straight to D. So
right. Yeah, mine changed from my response to you is when I was a beginner DM, it was way easier to have something already written that I was just trying to run as written, even though it still took a lot of work to do that, because like you said, you have to read through it and you have to imagine how all the pieces connect to each other, because they don't ever tell you the effect of something. They might tell you the cause of something. They might say this character, this NPC has friction with this NPC. Keep that in mind while you're running the game. But they don't necessarily tell you what to do in the book when something happens with one or the other, or one goes missing, or they come into conflict. It's kind of up to you. So in some ways, you're still creating a lot of stuff, even though you're running a written adventure. But as I became a more confident dungeon master, as I ran more games, it became much easier to create my own and have way less prep than I do when I'm doing a as written hardcover book.
Yeah.
But if I'm starting out, I never would have been able just to build my own campaign. Now, we're not talking like a one shot. A one shot's kind of different.
Mm-hmm.
And we're really talking about the difference between campaign setup and session setup, which sometimes bleeds into each other. But those are two different things, because your campaign work that you're putting together is about stringing all this stuff together and where it's going and what are the storylines and what's happening. But then your session prep is, okay, what do I think they're actually going to get to in this next 3 or 4 hours? So I need to prep that piece specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So there's two types of preps that we're talking. So I think as a experienced dungeon master, it's easier to prep your own stuff because, like you said, you wrote it, so you infinitely know it better than whoever. But as a beginning dungeon master, I felt like it was probably easier to do the hardcover book and just follow what it was doing, so I didn't have to do all the heavy workload.
Nope, I 100% agree, and I think that's the situation I'm in now, where I was really pushing for my group that we run Ghosts of Saltmarsh rather than Jordan writing his own campaign for them, because I'm writing a campaign for my other group. And so I'm like, I don't want to write 2 campaigns. That just seems like way too much work. But then as I'm reading Ghosts of Saltmarsh and like going back over chapter 1 over and over again so I can get the full effect of it, I'm just like, man, this is taking a while. Like, more work than I anticipated. And I remember feeling this way when I read Hot Springs Island. But Hot Springs Island is so non-linear. Like, it is just this open sandbox that it took a long time for me to read through Hot Springs Island, but once I got all the way through it a couple times, I was able to not prep at all. And we would just sit down at the table and I'm like, what hex are you in? Oh, there you go. And I roll some dice. I'm like, this happens. And it was really, really cool about that. So, yeah.
I remember talking to one of my players about it. Like, we got to a point where I was thinking about what we were going to do for our party for the next adventure. And they said the same thing. They were like, just go buy whatever the new book is. It'll just be easy. You won't have to do any prep or anything at all. And I'm just like, no, that's not how it works.
You got to read a lot. Yeah. You got to prep and you got to do this. And then your players go in a different direction than the book thinks you're going to go. And that already happened. So my players are level 1 and we started Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and not a big spoiler, but like the level 1 adventure is to go visit a haunted house that's on the coast. And so they're exploring this haunted house, and they ended up like fighting some giant snakes in the garden, and the snakes almost took them out. And I was just like, oh yeah, you're level 1. Oh goodness. I okay. Hope you guys live. This is exciting. And then they got to another area. They ended up doing really well, but they don't have a lot of healing. They've got a paladin and an artificer for healing, both of which have fewer spell slots than a full caster. So I'm really curious how we're going to keep them healed going into the future. But as I was rereading the Artificer, it looks at level 3, they get an ability to put a lot of temporary hit points on creatures. So I think with that, my players will probably be okay. But
I don't know about the Alchemist, like the Artillerist.
No, the Alchemist, I think you can.
It does have it too.
You like put salves on people and different things and give them temporary hit points. I could be wrong. I need to reread it. I need to really understand the Artificer because we're playtesting it in my game. Right. So, you want to kind of understand what's happening.
I think the truth that we have found, both me and Jordan running lots of Dungeons and Dragons games now, is the most dangerous level you will ever face is level 1 in Dungeons and Dragons. No. You will never be in more danger than level 1.
It's crazy. And it's funny because they did a couple fights and were severely beat up, and we're like, well, let's take a long rest. And in my mind, I'm like, it's 10 in the morning. You know, like you're doing a long rest and it's 10 in the morning. But so I think what I'm going to do is they took a long rest, and we'll have them wake up at night, and then I'm going to have a bunch of like cool things happen at night in this haunted house that they're in and see what happens. So cool. It's kind of interesting, but so far I really like Ghosts of Saltmarsh. Every time I'm reading it, I get to a point where Like I'm reading the level 1 adventure and I'm like, that's really cool. And then I get to the level like 4 adventure and I'm like, man, this is really cool. And then I get to the level 5 adventure and I'm like, I can't wait for them to get to level 5 because this one is even cooler. And these are just older adventures from Dungeon Magazine and the some published material from the 1970s or 80s. And it's really, like, I think it's really well done. The book was promised to me, that there was a thread that kind of weaved all of these adventures together. And I would say that although it's there, it's pretty weak. It's nothing that's like, there's not a huge motivation other than money for players to go out and do stuff. Luckily, I'm pretty sure my players are greedy enough that they're going to be interested in money and they will do these adventures. And they're my players. They know, like, oh, Jordan has a quest for us. We should probably go on this quest. But I started out the adventure with a crazy old man that was talking about a haunted mansion. And one player was just like, well, I don't really see the point in going to that. And I'm like, oh, but the city council is offering a 200 gold reward for anybody that will come back with information. Oh, well, then we'll go. And I'm like, all right, I see how it is.
Yeah. I think the key too is don't fall into the trap of you're going to run 1 through 8 back to back to back. I think what you need to have prepared, dungeon masters that are going to run this, is you might be able to get away with running 1 and 2, but be ready to throw something in the middle that is something you make or you found somewhere else, or that just happens to fit in the area, that helps them get from level to level to level, because the XP or the way they need to be a certain level before they get to the next thing. And you need some filler to help smooth out transitioning from that one adventure to another. And you can easily do that by creating an adventure, like a bridge adventure of your own, or grabbing something that will help you bridge from one to the other. So don't be afraid. Don't feel like you're just going to run those 1 through 8 and you're done. That's not the type of the book it is. That's more like your Storm King's Thunder, your Tomb of Annihilations, your Waterdeep Dragon Heist, those ones. This one is, you have a loose set, but you're going to have to put some filler in too to make it work.
And that is an excellent segue to a DMSGuild book that I bought called the Uncaged Anthology Volume 1, which has a whole bunch of really cool adventures, many of them seafaring adventures that I feel work with Saltmarsh really, really well. Like, usually it's like you're in a city and you got a job to go investigate a swamp, or you got a job to go investigate an island, or you got a job to do this. And so they're full of these little like one-shots at certain levels. And I've been reading that, and I think I'm going to sprinkle some of those adventures in with my Ghosts of Saltmarsh group. Because, yeah, like you said, if you're going off of XP, they might not get to a certain level when you need them to. But they have been... the adventure really wants you to do milestone leveling, I guess.
Right.
So if you're going to do milestone leveling, you're probably fine. But it seems really weird when you play for like 4 sessions and it takes you 4 sessions to get to level 2 to level 3, but then 1 session to get to level 4, because you need to be level 4 before you go to the next one. So it's kind of like, it's not really, like, I don't know. After playing with experience points in Hot Springs Island, I like experience points now. That being said, as a DM, I hand out extra experience for just role-playing during the session, so I think my players level up a little faster than you normally would for just getting monster experience, but yeah.
Yeah, I do things like objectives that further the storyline, cool role-playing incidents that maybe weren't something necessarily that benefited the character, but because they played in character, it just made the story better. I like to award for that. I love to award for the creatures that they fight, or even if they don't fight them, I like to give them that XP also, if they found a cool way around it, just to encourage all the different ways that you can play the game, and not just let's murder hobo our way through it.
Yeah. So if you're interested, I will put a link in the comments or in the description below the YouTube video with the Uncaged Anthology Volume 1. It's all female writers. It's really cool. Like, I love the art in it. I love the stories that I've read so far. And they have tier 1 to tier 4 adventures. So it's really cool. And it's perfect. I think I'm going to sprinkle it in with Saltmarsh, and maybe even after Saltmarsh is done, and my players are level like 12 or 13, wherever it ends, I forget. I can continue on with Uncaged Anthology and do some extra stuff, and we can keep playing for higher levels. So,
We're sending them to Avernus. What are you talking about?
Or I'm doing that, yeah. Or by that time, Avernus is out in Descent, and I can play that. Which, gosh, I'm excited for that one too.
Well, going back to your other campaign, though, just to recap, are they level 10 or are they a level 11?
They're level 11.
And they're going to the Shadowfell.
And they're in the Shadowfell currently. They jumped through a portal, and they're in the Shadowfell. Yeah.
And have you actually written what's going to happen, or are you winging it?
Yes. So there is a Shadowfell book for 4th edition. What is that book called? That's gonna bug me. Shadowfell book.
I'm curious because I'm wondering how, like what's the difference going to be for this other game now, which is your home?
Gloomrot. So the Shadowfell book is called Gloomrot and Beyond. And Gloomrot is a city in the Shadowfell. And it's basically, this whole book is just like a kind of like Ghosts of Saltmarsh, where that first chapter of Ghosts of Saltmarsh is just like, here's all the things that you can do in Saltmarsh. Here's the like various plot hooks that happen in Saltmarsh. Gloomrot and Beyond is exactly the same, but for 4th edition. So the whole book is just like, here are various plot hooks that your players can go on. Here's the city of Gloomrot. Here are the outlying areas of the Shadowfell. Here's kind of how the Shadowfell works. So I've read through that book a couple times, and my idea is to have them kind of sandbox their way through the Shadowfell that way. So I haven't written a ton of like, you'll go here and then you'll go here, but I have read through that book, and my plan is, and I have a plan of attack for them to kind of eventually get to Gloomrot, and then from Gloomrot find out like the various quests they need to do to get back to where they want to go, which is home. So, but I'm going to have to I'm going to have to look over all of that again once we finish my game and we actually start playing again, because that was like several months ago that I went over that. But it's a really good book if you're interested in the Shadowfell. I know it's 4th edition and everyone's like, oh, boo, 4th edition. But 4th edition had really good source books too. And one of them is that one. Like the Neverwinter campaign setting is also a great source book for 4E. Like if you want to play a game in Neverwinter, yes, there is like 4th edition specific things about it, but it's so easy to just transfer it over. Like, oh, I'll just take this quest and make it a 5th edition quest. Like I'll take this monster and make it a 5th edition monster. It's not the end of the world. So what are the environmental effects of being in Shadowfell that you're going to place in your game? So Gloomrot and Beyond comes with a Shadowfell card deck that I have purchased the PDF of, and I printed out on cardstock, and I cut up all the things and I made little cards. So whenever your players take a long rest, or whenever something especially creepy happens, like a player dies maybe, or a player goes unconscious, or something, they see a monster they've never seen before that is just really scary, you have them roll, I think, a wisdom saving throw. And if they fail, they pull a card from that deck. And that card has basically kind of like a form of madness associated with it. Something wrong. Like they might lose 10 feet of movement, or they might have disadvantage on attacks, or they might have, I'm trying to think, like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but something negative. And then it's actually a mini quest for them. And as they go through, if they can overcome this form of madness, it turns into a positive. And so they might have disadvantage on attacks against undead, but if they can overcome their fear through dice rolls and role playing, it becomes a positive, and then they have advantage against undead. So it's a really cool mechanic, and that's what I'm going to use. Previously, my players were exploring an inverted pyramid that was linked to the Shadowfell, and in the 5th edition Dungeon Master's Guide, there's Shadowfell rules that they roll a wisdom saving throw, and if they fail, you roll a d6, and like this happens to them. And I use that throughout this, and so I think this is the next like step up, you know? So instead of just using those Shadowfell rules, I now have this like card system that like a whole bunch of crazy things can happen to them. So yeah, cool. It's really cool. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That was kind of similar. One of the things that I wanted to do in a very similar setting like that is I wanted to have a roll after they come out of their long rest that was hidden. And then I would send a message to each of the players and say, you are feeling this mood right now. to give them the opportunity to role play the mood of their character, but it's randomly decided each time they wake up. So you could be like, you're feeling really despondent. You're just angry. You woke up just angry. You feel like you're lost. You feel, you think somebody's watching you. Just like a bunch of these things that would be a random list, I would send them to them secretly to the players and then let them role play out the things that are happening through their dialogue and the way they do things, just to show that, hey, we're in a different world that's not the normal world. Like, play your mood, play your demeanor out, and let the other characters kind of thrive on it. I thought that'd be really interesting. But I like this idea of the card thing too. That's a really cool.
It's a cool mechanic. Yeah, I like it a lot. And I think there's 30 cards, so I could have them roll a d30 as well. But I think it's more fun to just be like, choose your poison.
Yeah, if I'm at a table, just let them pick a card. That's really cool because then it's them. You know, I like it.
And then two people can't get the same form of like Shadowfell Madness or something. But it's a really cool mechanic. The Shadowfell is one of those settings or worlds that I really like. A Feywild and the Shadowfell. I like that they're both dangerous, but they're both antithesis of themselves, and they're both not necessarily evil. Like the Feywild isn't necessarily good. There's some evil that happens there, and the Shadowfell isn't necessarily evil. It's just like this negative energy kind of plane, and so undead gravitate there. But even the undead, you might run into a vampire. It's not necessarily evil. He just lives there because the sun doesn't shine. It's a lot easier to live here than it is to live other places. So
yeah, and I like the enigma of the Raven Queen as a storyline character being tied to that world, and it's one of my favorite areas too.
Yeah, I like it a lot. So cool. I think it's going to be a fun adventure, and we'll see what level they get to, because I've been doing milestone leveling with them, so I'm not sure what level. Maybe a couple levels in the Shadowfell, and then they'll return home at level 13 or something. So we'll see.
And then it'll all be destroyed, a wasteland they've come back to.
We'll see. And then they have to something to keep the adventure going if they want to keep going.
It's Adventure's Endgame. They have to go
back in time into their other bodies to fight Loki.
It'll be great. So,
but yeah, cool. That's about all I did in games. I took up most of the time, so thank you for letting me go first.
No, I did it on purpose.
But what did you do in games this week?
So I got to play one we got through, one got canceled just due to scheduling. So we played Tomb of Annihilation on our Wednesday night game. Our characters are 6th level. We're probably 1 or 2 good sessions of fighting something, a couple of Yuan-Ti war parties or something, and I bet we'd make 7 pretty quick. But it was a session filled with lots of puzzles. So we kind of encountered, like in the first couple sessions, once we got to the city in Tomb of Annihilation, it was heavy combat. We were fighting everything. It seemed like the whole city was trying to kick us out, and we were just fighting constantly. And we did something that was really cool, I think. We did 4 full-on regular encounters before we were able to take a long rest. So we were really taxed to our limits about what we could do, how we managed our resources, how bad things were getting towards the end, because we weren't able just to do 1 encounter, long rest, 1 encounter, long rest, 1 encounter, because you really are powerful if you let your players do that. And I was impressed that our party was still able to live through those 4 major encounters without having a long rest, which was cool. We wouldn't have made another one, I don't think. I think we were done after that. If we had a 5th major encounter, we weren't going to make it because we needed that rest for sure. So that was pretty cool. The puzzles, again, this was interesting because, as many of you know, I played in Tomb of Annihilation previously on a different stream, and now I'm playing it on another one. So we got to 2 parts where I knew the puzzles. Like, our party went through these in the previous one I played. And so, on my players, I've told my players, my DM knows I've played this part, and they looked at me and they said, is this a part that you're going to participate in, or is this a part you're not going to participate in? And I said, my character doesn't know anything about this. That's how I'm playing it. And I just kind of sat back and I let the other members of the group try to figure out what was going on, how to get through what little thing we need to do. And they did a great job. They didn't need me helping them or hinting at them. The Dungeon Master gave them good clues. it did still take a while. Puzzles can sometimes bring a session kind of dragging as they're trying to work through the ideas of what's going on. But I think you just have to have patience to let them work through it. I think you just have to gauge, again, where their level of fun is. Are they having fun while figuring it out?
Mm-hmm.
And start to watch for they're not having fun, but they're still trying to figure it out. Because there's like a curve or a line on a bar graph that says, fun, I'm figuring something out, but I don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it slowly goes downward and downward, downward until they're just like, this isn't fun. I don't even want to play this anymore. I don't care if we ever figure it out. This is dumb.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got to curtail that before it gets all the way down there and destroys, you know, your party's momentum or your party's excitement in playing the game. So keep an eye on that, Dungeon Masters, for sure. Horde of the Dragon Queen was the one that got canceled, so I did not get to play my Artificer this week, though I went back and I was rereading through, and I'm waffling between wanting to play the one with the Iron Defender too, the Warsmith, because that one sounds really cool to me. I like the idea of having an iron dog or an iron, you know, Rottweiler, iron Mastiff next to me. That'd be kind of cool. That does some cool things. And we have reformed our parties. We have had this big cataclysmic event in Seeking Revenor, and though we had a holiday on Monday, so I was not able to wrangle in my players. They all had holiday stuff they were doing. We are returning this Monday, so we will get back to Seeking Revenor on Monday with a 4-person group. This is going to be now following what it was before. It was a West Marches game. Most of you probably know this because I've been talking about it for episode after episode, but it was a West Marches game, and lots of groups could go out and explore this brand new land. Revenor is a continent in Forgotten Realms, but it's across the Great Ocean. And we don't have a lot of books that talk about Revenor, or they used to call it, what's the other name for it? Anchrome, I think was the other name for it. Anchrome and Revenor are the same name, which is above like Maztica and all that kind of stuff, right? So we're having lots of groups go out. So as you watch the campaign unfold, and all the players came from fans of the show that played this, they would form groups, they'd form an expedition, they'd go out on one night, and they would always come back. So that's how every session went. They got to explore all this land. They got to find out all the different things that are happening, which was super cool. But now I'm going to bring the focus back into a regular campaign, which is one group that's going out and how they live in this world now that has been explored by all these other groups that have went out there. So it's going to be fun to bring it back to kind of in my mind, a normal campaign versus an abnormal campaign, because the West Marches one was running a campaign very differently when you're running it for 20, 30 people, that the groups are always changing. Mm-hmm. So now I'm getting back to a more normal campaign.
Sweet.
So that's going to be good. I can't wait for that on Monday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. And I'll definitely talk about how that goes and how we bring everybody back in and what we're doing with that. We still have, I also want to there's a lot of, now that we're into June, I had a lot of people contact me, just like you did with Indoor Adventure, talking about doing some one-shots here and there. So I think a lot more of those are going to be popping up. And God, I must have joined on 4 more Kickstarters over the last month again, because I have a Kickstarter addiction. And so I have a bunch of more games that are coming that I'm going to want to play. And I still have a bunch of games I bought last year that I still haven't played. And I still want to play more like a Kids on Bikes or Kids with Wands, or, you know, I still want to do all these other games. I want the Tales from the Loop and the new expansion they put out, which was, what's the new one called? It's something from the deep or something.
I don't remember.
It's about coming up from the ocean in some way, and it looked really good. And
Things
so that
from
looked
the
good.
Flood.
Yeah, there you go. And I bought the Aliens RPG that's coming out. I pre-ordered that. I got a bunch of cool Kickstarters are coming. So definitely going to be seeing more gaming. It's not just going to be Dungeons and Dragons, though. We still have, as you can tell, a full docket of Dungeons and Dragons goodness. And I think for sure I'm going to run Descent into Avernus I can't even think. I'm messing myself up the way I should say it.
Avernus? Yes.
Avernus.
There you go.
Avernus.
I don't know. Avernus. I'm pretty sure it's Avernus.
I'm going to run that one. So I've skipped over Waterdeep. I've skipped over Dungeon of the Mad Mage. I'm skipping over, though I really shouldn't, because this Saltmarsh looks really good, what I've been reading of it. I'm skipping over that one, and I'm going to jump back into released campaign setting, adventure book, Wizards of the Coast, that one, and I'm going to run a group for that. So
Sweet.
1 through whatever that one's going to be, because I think that'll be super. I love the idea of D&D and Mad Max. I want to smash them together, so be ready for that. So that is about all I had for the week. That's all that's going on. The rest of this week is going to be cleaning my pool. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to say. I had my first day of swimming in my new pool yesterday. I went swimming for the first time. So the water was cold, but it wasn't so bad that you couldn't do it. And so, yeah, the swimming season has started.
That's awesome.
Listen to that, Jordan.
That's our cue.
That's our cue.
Well, that's our show, ladies and gentlemen.
Let me mute it. Go ahead.
That's our show, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming out and watching us, the Saturday morning D&D show. If you would be so kind to leave a like and a comment on the YouTube video, and maybe even a review on iTunes or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, that would also be wonderful. We would 100% appreciate that. And with that, guys, I have a new video on Wednesday that I'm so excited for. I've been editing it all weekend. I have to film some stuff today to edit in an intro. Oh my God. It's going to be so good. And I'm really excited for you guys to watch it. So watch the Jordan YouTube channel on Wednesday. I think I'm going to premiere it, which means that it will be a pre-recorded video that will go up live at like maybe 9 or 10 o'clock PST. I'm not really sure yet. But yeah, it's going to be awesome. My wife is in the chat wondering why we are not swimming right now. So that's awesome.
Exactly.
Thank you for watching my show, my lovely wife. And with that, guys, we will be out of here, and we will see you next week with another episode of the Saturday Morning D&D Show. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.